Welcome to Wednesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live right here on Giants.com and the Giants mobile app. Of course, it's brought to you by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmeelk. Konnichiwa, Mr. Citak. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Fresh off his honeymoon in Japan. Konnichiwa's hello? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, can you lay some other Japanese you picked up while you were there on me? What do you got?
Well, you said one of the two words I know.
What's the other one?
Arigato.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. And then the only other one I know is oishi, which is what you say basically like very good in terms of like food.
Oh, okay.
Like, tastes very good. Oishi.
I thought that was Mario's...
Yoshi.
Yeah.
That's close.
No?
Very close.
No?
Very close.
Well, yeah, obviously people should know Domi Arigato, Mr. Roboto.
Oh,
from
of
the
course.
Song, of course.
Of
People
course.
should know that. I guess with people that are anime fans, they probably pick up some Japanese over the course of watching their
I
anime.
can't say I'm a
neither am I.
anime fan, but yeah, anime is very big there.
All right, so give me your highlight of the properly rated highlight of your honeymoon for the Big Blue Kickoff live show. What did you enjoy the most? You were there, 16 days?
14. 2
14.
weeks. 2 weeks.
It's a long time.
Which we planned the trip, back in October, thinking, oh, it's the middle of May, probably won't miss much, and then ended up missing a good amount back here. But what can you do? Highlight, I would say, definitely just Tokyo. It is such a cool city. I kind of described it as like a alternate universe version of New York City.
It's like super clean, right?
Super, super clean. There was one area that I guess would be considered sort of like the Times Square area of Tokyo that was a little dirty, and we saw a couple of homeless people there, but other than that, the city was spotless.
And there's no, and I think their theory, right, is that they don't put garbage cans out, so people can't take stuff to throw away because there are no garbage cans to put the stuff in.
That's what I was just about to say. No garbage cans at all on the streets. You'd have to go into like a 7-Eleven or like a Family Mart. It's basically like a little convenience store, and that is where all the garbage cans, recycling, everything is.
How much of this are any signs in English, or is it all Japanese?
A little bit of English, but mostly Japanese. A lot of people do speak English there. Obviously, English is sort of like the language of the world.
Commerce and all that, of course.
But heavy, obviously, on the Japanese.
Okay. Did you have any odd run-ins with anything NFL related while you were in Japan?
One.
Okay.
One
what you got? What you got?
Which was my wife and I did a tour of an area called the Bamboo Forest in near Kyoto.
Okay.
And we were in a group with like 10 people. We were by far the youngest of the group. And that was one of the only days I wore a Giants t-shirt. And of course, there was an elderly couple from New York, huge Giants fans.
Nice.
The guy was a longtime season ticket member.
Get out of here.
And he, for the first couple minutes, decided it'd be a good opportunity to just get rid of all of his complaints on me.
Did he find that? Did he know you worked for the team? You told him?
I told, because he first said,
that was your first mistake.
You're a Giants fan. I'm like, yes, lifelong Giants fan, but I also work for the team. And then he just dove right in on any complaint he's had.
Were you able to satisfy any of those complaints?
Not really, no, because it was about, just departments that I don't work in. So I was like, I'm sorry, but, if you check out the Big Blue Kickoff Live podcast, maybe I can answer some of your football questions.
So it wasn't like, what stinks? That fact or fiction on Giants.com. their takes are terrible. You didn't get any of that? All right,
no,
good.
it was more just like logistical stuff about specific events and things
season
like that.
ticket related stuff. Yeah, I got you.
He complained that the tickets are no longer printed out, that it's all mobile on the phone, and he did not like this. I was like, that is above my pay grade.
And you know what? That happened to me too. As someone that's a Knicks season ticket holder, 2 or 3 years ago, they went to digital only. Mm-hmm. And, the first year, it was a little kinky, you know what I mean? Like you would try to use the app when you got there and it wouldn't work. But the last couple of years has actually been super smooth. I know it has been here too. So I know.
Yeah. That's not something that ever bothered me, but I'm 31 years old. I guess for the older generations, that could be something that might be a little annoying, but out of my control. So
very cool. Did you do any cool historical stuff while you're out there, or was it mostly like?
Yeah, we saw a lot. We saw a lot of shrines, mostly in Kyoto, but there are some in the Tokyo area as well.
Kyoto's basically considered like the cultural capital of Japan, right?
Right. While Tokyo is like a version of New York City, Kyoto, I would say, is like the opposite. Very traditional Japan.
A lot of old buildings and such.
A lot of old buildings.
Yeah, because that was one of the cities we never bombed Kyoto. I don't think during World War II, or if we did, it was very limited.
I don't think so. Yeah, so very interesting city, and then we spent a couple of days in the Mount Fuji area.
Nice.
Which was...
little hikes? You did some hiking and stuff?
Well, the one full day we had there was torrential downpour.
Oh, no.
So while we had a good view of Mount Fuji, we did not get to really hike around the area too much, unfortunately. But...
Did you see a lot of cherry blossom trees?
No.
Really?
Because cherry blossom season technically ends like a couple of days before we got there, and we thought, a couple of days they'll still be there, but they were basically all gone.
They're all gone. That's too bad. That's Japan's
Yeah, we missed it by a couple of days, but
usually I guess cherry blossom seasons is like beginning of April to end of April, kind of.
I think it technically ends in like the first couple of days of May.
Yeah,
like May 3rd or 4th, and we got there the 8th. So we just missed it. But
all right. You said before we got to our topic today, you wanted to touch on things that happened while you were gone. I didn't think much happened while you were gone, but maybe I'm wrong. Go ahead. What do you got?
Maybe I was just suffering from some FOMO, being on the other side of the world and seeing what I thought was some interesting things.
Yes, fire off your takes. What do you got?
Okay. First off, somewhat minor, but the Allen Robinson signing happened like a day or two after I left.
Yep.
Just real quick. Obviously, didn't put up the biggest stats last season for the Steelers.
Last 3 years, really.
The last couple of years, but I do think at the very least he's just going to bring a great veteran leadership to the wide receiver room, that outside of Robinson and maybe like Isaiah McKenzie is a pretty young group. Darius Slayton, being in the league, going into his 6th season now, I think would have been the most veteran guy in the room. So I do think Robinson will just bring some veteran leadership and really help the three youngest receivers in Malik Neighbors, Jalen Hyatt, and Wan'Dale Robinson. Rookie minicamp, I'm not really going to touch on much there. Just from looking at the transcripts from the 6 draft picks, it seems like this rookie class is just a mature group of guys, which I think will be good for them to quickly mesh with the rest of the locker room, and B, I think that will potentially help that rookie class contribute right away.
Now that you're back, I would definitely watch the videos because the guys were just really engaging. I just think you'll really appreciate how kind of Neighbors too, right? Because Neighbors was really tired and kind of worn out when he got here right after the draft. You get drafted, you have a fun time, right? You're going to be tired the next day. It happens. Yeah. But all the guys were just really engaging. When you get a chance, you should go watch the videos.
Definitely will. All right, what's next on the list? The Germany game. Very excited about that.
Germany.
Very excited about that. Hopefully, I'll be able to join you guys on that trip.
You'll be taking your Axis powers of World War II year trip, apparently. And
you have to
going up against, and then you'll click off all 3.
That's true. Going up against the Panthers, obviously very winnable game. So hopefully that is a good experience. Hard Knocks. This, we've known about for a little bit of time internally. Yeah. This I'm very excited about.
Yeah, I guess a lot did happen. You're not wrong. I forgot about all this stuff.
We've had the privilege the last couple of years of having Giants Life, which I think all fans can agree was a very cool, in-depth look at what goes on behind the scenes. And I think this is just going to be a longer version of that. I mean, this is something that as soon as we heard was in the works of potentially happening, I was very excited and hoping that it would end up coming to fruition. Now it is, so can't wait for that in about 6-7 weeks. I think the first episode airs.
Tuesday of right. It's every Tuesday in July is when it's airing.
Yeah, I think beginning the first week of July. So it's coming up soon.
July 2nd, I believe. The first show.
Next, the uniforms.
Oh yeah, okay.
I know that seems to be a hot topic the last week. Again, this is something that we first saw these long time ago. I don't remember when exactly, but months and months ago. I like them. I really do like them. I think it shows a lot of the history of the team. And obviously this is the 100th season. There's going to be a lot of talk about Giants history. And I mean, you look at some of the old retro jerseys that other teams, I specifically think of like the Steelers throwback jersey that they wore, I don't know how many years ago. that's what this jersey is. It's not supposed to be like a cool, new, modern, alternate uniform. It's supposed to just, highlight the history of the organization.
I remember those like weird navy blue uniforms the Packers had, right? When they did their throwback at some point. Yeah, like that. I think I tried to make that point too, where fans were like, well, why didn't you make the pants white? And I'm like, yeah, white pants would have made the uniform look really cool. Here's the problem. The Giants didn't wear white pants. And this is a recreation of an old uniform. This is not creating a brand new uniform from scratch. It's different.
Yeah, I mean, I think fans heard new uniform and were thinking like, Bingo. The new uniforms that the Lions have had in recent years, and even the Seahawks with the teal green or the neon green. That's not what this uniform is. It's not what it's supposed to be.
Correct.
And at the end of the day, I think if the Giants go out and win the game or two games that they're wearing those uniforms in.
And we have not announced the uniform schedule yet. By the way,
we don't know what games that's happening. But if the Giants go out and win that game or two games, I think fans will come around and start to love that jersey. And then finally, this week, just the start of OTAs. Obviously, the big news to come out is that Daniel Jones was participating. He was on the field. Again, this is my first day back in the office, so I unfortunately was not out there the last 2 days to see exactly what he was doing, but just the fact that he was out there in any capacity, I think is encouraging. People could have their opinions on Daniel Jones, but at the end of the day, he is the best quarterback on the roster, and it could only benefit the Giants and the offense to have him healthy for the start of training camp and be ready to go for week 1. So.
And I'll be honest with you, Matt, watching him out there, and since the Giants were gracious enough to let us actually, break that news that he was out there doing 7-on-7 on the website, I can talk about it a little bit more openly, I think. You wouldn't have even known he had an injury if he wasn't doing team stuff. Like when he's opening up sprinting with the trainers on the side, like he looks really, really good. If he wasn't doing everything, just watching him move around and work, I would have had no idea he was even coming off of an injury.
Yeah, that's what Dan Salomon told me upstairs this morning.
You would have no idea.
That, honestly, he looked great out there. And so that can only mean good things. So was excited to hear about that. I'm excited to be out on the practice field tomorrow.
Yeah.
Get to see it a little bit. And honestly, I'm looking forward just to being able to watch some football.
Football's back, baby.
It's been a few months now that I've been able to actually watch football live in person. So very excited to see it. Obviously OTA practices aren't quite the same as, even training camp or during the season. But again, I'm just excited to see some football.
It's funny you say that. And I wrote about this. I forget if it was in cover 4. I think it was cover 4, what to look for in OTAs. And the way I put it was this, before OTAs start, you get super excited because to your point, it's kind of like football again. And then you watch it and you're like, oh, but it's not. It's like it's close and it's better than nothing, but it's still not everything in your head. You're like, oh, we're back. We're back, baby. And then you get out there, you're like, oh, yeah, no contact.
Yeah, no, that's true.
It's kind of not like football, but you can still, to your point, you can still kind of judge some things by watching.
And I'm excited to see Malik Neighbors live for the first time.
Yeah, he has not been able to really open up yet because everything they've done the first 2 days has been short field stuff, a lot of red zone. So you haven't seen him quite be able to work in a lot of space yet.
Mm.
I can't. I've been watching him on all these plays, Citak, and I'm like, oh. Just let me see him open it up and just give him, isolate him on one side of the field, give him 10 yards on either side to work on, just let him go. And I want to see what he looks like. They haven't done one-on-ones yet, cornerbacks, wide receivers, anything like that. So haven't quite gotten what I want to see yet. I don't know when they're going to start doing full field work. I'm guessing probably not yet tomorrow. Maybe they'll do fringe stuff tomorrow. But by next week, I bet we'll start seeing Neighbors be able to open up a little bit.
Yeah,
and I imagine they're going to try to get to him over the top a couple times against Deontay Banks, which will be fun. They've been matched up a bunch together, which has been a lot of fun to watch.
Love that.
All right, quick things. You weren't here for the schedule release either. I want to get a couple of your takes on the schedule. They've heard mine. There's a big Giants Huddle episode up there with Paul and I talking about the schedule. Make sure you go check that out. And, of course, we talked a little bit about it last couple of days as well. Paul with last week with Howard and Casillas, and I touched on it briefly at the end of yesterday's show. But real quick, Matt, toughest game. Which game to you is the toughest game on this schedule?
Toughest game, I got to say, there was 2 that I put down. I would say 1A and 1B. For 1A, it's got to be the matchup against the Ravens. I mean, even though that is home, it's at MetLife. I just think looking at all the opponents on the schedule this season, Baltimore is the toughest.
No, they're the only team on the schedule that got to a title game last year, right?
Yeah,
that's the AFC title game.
They were the number one seed in the AFC. I think they had the best record in the whole league in the regular season last year.
Did they finish ahead of the Chiefs in the AFC?
They did, right? Yeah. They were the one seed in the
that's
AFC.
Right.
So that's got to be, my take for the toughest game. The 1B, I would say, which might be slightly surprising, is a different AFC North matchup
at Pittsburgh.
Monday night. That's why prime time at that stadium for any team, that's going to be a very tough matchup.
Yeah, I think so too.
We opened the season against the Steelers a couple years ago on Monday night. Was that 2021 or 2022?
Yeah, one, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously we fell short in that game, hoping for a better result this year.
Actually, it had to be 20, right? Because you played the AFC North. Anyway, not important.
Yeah, whenever it was.
Yes.
And we lost that week one matchup.
4 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, hoping for better results this year. But yeah, that, going up against that away crowd, that environment, Monday night game, especially because we assume the Steelers are going to be better this year with the quarterback position a little more solidified. That's going to be a tough matchup.
No, I'm with you. I'm not going to throw at Philly out there because it's the last game of the year. We don't know who's even going to be playing. At Dallas on Thanksgiving is always really, really tough.
Yeah.
Short week in that building against that team on Thanksgiving national TV. That's not going to be easy, obviously. And then the two, I think, sleeper teams, and I guess I can jump to that one in terms of underrated team on the schedule. I think at Cleveland and at Seattle are both very, very tough games too. Cleveland is a very good football team, guys. If Deshaun Watson could ever rediscover what he had before he left Houston, the Browns would be Super Bowl contenders. Like, they would have a real chance to win that division and go to the Super Bowl. I don't know if Deshaun Watson's ever going to rediscover himself, but between that offensive line, that Jim Schwartz defense, they have really good wide receivers. They got a good set of running backs. We'll see where Nick Chubb is health-wise in week 3. But that game at Cleveland, and then, of course, how tough it is to play at Seattle, right? Those two are two other really, I think, tough games on the schedule as well.
Yeah, the matchup in Cleveland was one of the ones I also marked down. They had, during the regular season last year, I think they had the best defense in the NFL.
Probably for the first 12 or 13 weeks of the year. And frankly, it wasn't even that close. It was historically good.
Yeah, I think the only reason why it kind of, I don't even want to say fell apart towards the end, but dropped a bit from what they were the first 3 months of the season was because they just were not getting the quarterback play. I know Flacco came in and ended up,
right.
stabilizing the position a bit towards the end of the season, but they were really in flux when it came to the quarterback position for a while. And I think towards, as you said, week 12, week 13, when they started to dip a little bit, I think the fact that the defense was just on the field for as long as they were every single game just sort of caught up to them towards the end. But I agree. I think if Deshaun comes close to being anything like what he was with the Texans, or even what he started, I think it was what he started looking like last year before he got hurt, he started to play a little bit better. If he can return to that sort of form, that is going to be a very, very dangerous team. And the other underrated team I marked down, another home matchup for the Giants, but week 17 against the Colts. I just think the Colts are a team this year. I don't want to say they're getting slept on because I do feel like they are a somewhat popular sleeper pick. I think because of how successful the Texans were this past season, they're being overlooked in the AFC South, and I do think the Texans will end up winning the division, but it would not surprise me if Anthony Richardson takes sort of the next step in his development and can stay healthy, because that was obviously his biggest issue last year. I don't think he finished, or maybe he had one full game where he started and was able to finish the game, one or two. If he can stay healthy and take the next step, I think the Colts could definitely push to be a wild card team and surprise a lot of teams this year.
I'm with you. Talking about all the rookie quarterbacks, Richardson's basically a rookie. I mean, he barely played last year. So we'll see if he can kind of boost that team up a little bit. All right, best quarterback on the schedule that the Giants are going to have to face this year.
All right, again, mark 2 down, both from the same division.
I think we're on the same page here, too. Go ahead.
Lamar Jackson, who obviously just won MVP last past season, was the best player in the league, period. And then Joe Burrow. I think he is obviously more of a question mark. He's coming off the wrist surgery from this past season. That I actually saw something a couple days ago. I forgot who it was. There was another player that got the same surgery, and he was just talking about how it took him like over a full year to really regain full like power and mobility in that wrist.
Really?
I need to look up which player it was. I don't think it was a quarterback, so obviously that changes things a little bit. But if Burrow is healthy for the start of the season, then I would say he's right up there with Lamar Jackson. I thought he was going to push to be an MVP last year.
I agree.
And obviously his season got derailed from the first day of training camp when he hurt his calf, and that affected him the first 6 weeks of the season. He finally started to get going, and then he suffered the wrist injury. If he's back to being healthy, I think, again, he could potentially push to be MVP this year.
I'm with you. And then I think you have, after those two guys, you have Dak and Cousins, and Hurts would be your next kind of group of three. And then, look, it's a lot of young quarterbacks in the Giants' schedule, right? You have maybe J.J. McCarthy in week 1. It might be Sam Darnold. We'll see. You get Jaden Daniels twice. You already mentioned Anthony Richardson, who's basically a rookie. You're going to get him. You get, and I'm forgetting one of the young guy, and Bryce Young, who's basically a rookie.
Yeah.
Given what last year looked like for him, I mean, you can just wipe that thing clear. And Dave Canales has had a lot of good things. He's his new head coach, former offensive coordinator for the Bucs. Had a lot of good things to say about what Bryce Young's doing. So a lot of young guys on that schedule for them as well. Toughest game, Matt, simply based on timing or schedule, where you don't like the circumstance of the game. I can already kind of gave mine. Thanksgiving in Dallas. It's just a really tough game. What stuck out to you?
Yeah, so we've already touched on the two games that I put down for that.
Okay.
One of them being the Thanksgiving Day matchup in Dallas. Obviously, just the short week. Both teams are coming off a short week. Actually, for both games against the Cowboys, they both land on a Thursday, which I thought was just a little bit of an odd quirk of the schedule.
I wonder what Amazon had to do to get a Giants-Cowboys game. Because that is the game that all the networks fight over endlessly. For them to get one of those, I can only imagine how much they either paid extra or they sacrificed in order to get that one monster game early in the year.
Yeah, so, I mean, both of those games being short weeks, I mean, it'll be tough for both teams. But the Thanksgiving one in Dallas, obviously that's going to be tough. And then the other one, I mentioned the Monday Night Football game in Pittsburgh. That's just a very tough environment to play on the road, and especially in prime time. Circumstances-wise, that's going to be a tough game.
Best non-quarterback on offense and defense on the schedule this year.
I want to start with defense, just because I know right before we came on air, I brought up the Fact or Fiction from this past week, and this was basically one of the questions on Fact or Fiction, and this is the one that we differed on.
Oh, did we really differ on it? Interesting. Okay.
Close, but we differed.
I have no shame stealing from Salomon's Fact or Fiction idea. So just be prepared for that.
So I am going with, for the toughest non-quarterback defensive player, TJ Watt.
Watt over Myles Garrett, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
Which
explain why.
You know, it's sort of like pick your poison when it comes to those two. They were probably the two top defensive players in the NFL. And they have been for the last couple of years. I know Garrett won Defensive Player of the Year this past year, but Watt was second. He finished right behind him. He's led the NFL in sacks 3 of the last 4 years.
Is it 3 out of 4?
3 out of 4.
That's pretty good.
First team All-Pro in 4 of the last 5. Again, they're both the top 2, I would say, non-quarterback players that the Giants are going to face this year, with Micah Parsons being a very close third. Both of them are dangerous and going to have to keep a very close eye on them, but I gave the edge to TJ Watt.
No, I'm with you, and I'll just throw as another kind of honorable mention in there. I'll throw Roquan Smith in there from Baltimore, who's one of the best middle linebackers, but I would put all 3 guys you mentioned ahead of him on that list, too. I'm with you. Best non-quarterback offensive player?
Justin Jefferson, week 1.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I would say I came down to Justin Jefferson or potentially Jamar Chase with the Bengals, and I believe it's week 6. I mean, Justin Jefferson's the best wide receiver in the NFL, and I don't even think it's very close. I think he's still
Remember last year, though, he had a rough year because of the injury. So
because of the injuries, yeah. Again, this is assuming he's back healthy. I would say Justin Jefferson's a tough matchup for any cornerback on any team. Doesn't matter how long you've been in the league. He's just very, very tough. And then the one other person I mentioned, sleeper pick, and this is just because of his new team and how he fits with that offense, Derrick Henry. I think Derrick Henry on the Ravens
I like that.
is going to push for Offensive Player of the Year. I think he's going to go off. If he reached 20 touchdowns on the ground, it would not surprise me. I know Lamar obviously runs the ball a lot himself, so I was going to say he could even push for like 2,000 rushing yards. That I think will be tough just because of how much Lamar runs the ball with himself. But I just think Derrick Henry in that offense is potentially the best fit of any player that changed teams this offseason.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Deonte Banks is going to have his hands full this year, okay? I'm just going to I'm going to literally go through the schedule very quickly. This is the team's number one wide receivers in all the Giants games. Vikings, Justin Jefferson. Commanders, Terry McLaurin. Browns, Amari Cooper. Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb. Seahawks, take your pick, DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett. Bengals, take your pick, Jamar Chase or T. Higgins. Eagles, take your pick, A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith. Steelers, Pickens is a really good receiver, very immature, but and also drafted Roman Wilson. Commanders again, Terry McLaurin. Carolina Panthers, you get Deontay Johnson. Tampa Bay Bucks, take your pick, Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. Dallas Cowboys, here comes CeeDee Lamb again. Chris Olave, New Orleans Saints. Zay Flowers, Baltimore Ravens. Who's the big receiver? Not Kyle Pitts, the other one in Atlanta. Drake London, thank you. Falcons, Indianapolis Colts. Take your pick. Do you like Michael Pittman Jr.? Do you like Josh Downs? Do you like Adonai Mitchell, who they just drafted? Yep. Good players. And then you get the Eagles again with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. That dude, and again, we'll see if he ends up mirroring or following the other team's best wide receiver. But whomever the Giants' corners are, this is not an easy schedule. There's a lot of really good wide receivers on this schedule.
Oh, yeah. 100%. I mean, Deonte Banks, as a rookie this past year, kind of got thrown right into the fire and matched up against at least some of the guys that you mentioned, at least the NFC East opponents. I mean, he was matched up against A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin, and he had his ups and downs against those guys in particular. I'm not going to say he dominated by any stretch, but he had his moments where he showed that he can develop into that number one quarterback that you can just put out on an island against one of the top receivers in the NFL, and he's going to hold his own. So I'm excited to see how Deonte Banks does with this gauntlet of receivers that you just mentioned.
It should be a lot of fun. All right, folks, go subscribe to the Giants Huddle podcast. The most recent episode, we compiled all of the media interviews we did with people that covered our draft picks at their relative colleges. We put them all together in the one convenient podcast for you. Go check it out on the Giants Huddle podcast, giants.com/podcast, the Giants app, or on your favorite podcast platform. Just search for Giants Huddle. And don't forget to leave those 5-star positive reviews for us wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, let's get to the calls. 201-939-4513. All right, Tim is in Charleston. He either has a story he wants to tell, wants to talk about shortstop Trevor Story, or has a question about a story that we've told previously, because it just says story here. Tim, what's going on?
Well, it was more the first one.
Okay, what do you got?
So when the top plays came out, I thought of one play that meant a lot to me. And then Hugo called in and talked about it, the Gary Reisman's tackle of Bobby Humphries on fourth down in that December game against the Broncos in Denver in 1989. Now, so without rehashing that game per se, although I'll mention one or two little parts of it, it's more of a personal story for me because that happened to be the day my daughter was born.
Oh, wow.
And so we're at the hospital, and my wife's going through the pains of labor. And in the afternoon, as the afternoon goes on, they finally give her some Demerol, and when I saw that, I was like, I want some of that when this is over, because it just calmed her right down, and then they gave her an epidural. So I'm sitting there, I'm just sitting by the bed, and she's out, and the doctor comes in, and he says to me, it's in Staten Island University Medical Center or University Hospital, and he comes in and he says, she's asleep. She's going to be asleep for a while. Why don't you come down with me to the lounge at the end of the hall? He said, the Giants game is on. So I go down and I start watching the Giants game with the doctor, and of course that drive starts, and Denver's inside the 20, and down inside at the 2-yard line, and it's second and goal from the 1, and they stop him. And on third down, actually, it was Steve Diassi who stopped him before Reason stopped him on fourth down. And the one thing Hugo said was how Madden had said, or Summerall, I guess it was Madden who said that he had 2 of the best stops he had ever seen in that game.
Yeah.
That was before the Humphrey stop. And then he reiterated it. He was like, make it 3. And then, of course, that incredible stop by Gary Reasons. Oh, so as that drive, as they get down closer and they're inside the 20, the nurse comes down, and she says to me, your wife is starting to wake up. I said, I'll be right down right after this drive. I figured you, as someone with children who has probably, I'm sure, been through the labor thing, you might appreciate that story. And then, of course, the Giants end up winning that game. So this is a little a musical aside. There's a Doors song called Blue Sunday, which then, because of that, my daughter was born on a Blue Sunday. Became like my personal song for my daughter, and I'm not going to sing it to you, but it just opens with, I met my own true loved one on a Blue Sunday. She looked at me and told me I was the only one in her world. Now I have found my girl. And that's all. I just wanted to share that story. I thought you.
Now, Tim, I have 2 questions for you. Did your wife find out how long you abandoned her in the hospital room by herself to go watch the Giants game?
I don't think the length of time ever came up.
How long was it? How long was it? I should probably ask that too. A couple hours?
It's funny. I don't remember if it was like, I don't remember if it was the beginning of the third quarter or the end of right before the half. I don't remember exactly when I got there. It was more the fourth quarter that I remember. But then the funny part of it, the other thing that I always say is, so then I go back in the room, and I'm sitting there, and she's getting closer, and the nurses have her met, but the doctor's still not in the room.
That was my next question. How long was the doctor in there? Doesn't he have other patients?
Because that wasn't the last drive of the game. That wasn't the last drive of the game. So, well, no, I guess he came in for us that day, and so then doctor comes in the room at about like 10 minutes to 8 o'clock, and he said. And I turn around and look at him. He said, Giants won. Now let's have this baby. And my daughter was born at 8:28 p.m. And I said, if the Giants game wasn't on, I'm sure she would have been born by 8.
Oh, man, that is funny. That is funny.
So that's it. I just wanted to share that with you.
Oh, that's great.
And vote, and thanks for your time, and maybe I'll talk to you later in the week.
Yeah, and we have still the bracket voters up there, by the way, folks. If you want to vote for the Giants' greatest play in Giants history, go to giants.com/bracket. I believe we jump to the next bracket on Thursday, so you have the rest of today to vote in this would be the blue bracket, I think that's up there now.
I believe so.
So go there, cast your vote, and then we'll have the next bracket up tomorrow. And we will move bracket to bracket, and the new Huddle podcast on that bracket will be up as well. His story reminds me of, did you ever watch Friends a lot growing up? When Phoebe's having the triplets and her doctor's obsessed with Fonzie. Very good episode.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
It's a good episode.
It's been a while since I've watched Friends, but love that show.
Yeah, absolutely. 201-939-4513. Let's go to Hugo in New Jersey. He's up next. Hi, Hugo.
Well, my name was just referenced, so I figured I'd call in. Hey, maybe it's because of the 100th season and sort of our reflections and focus on history. But I think BBKL is the only show where you'll get a reference to the Axis powers and Soviet-era 5-year plans.
Yes, you're probably right. You're right. Yes, because yesterday you had the Soviet-era 5-year plan. You're right.
Anyhow,
oh boy.
So look, since Tim brought it up, and I know I mentioned another play in that game, which was the David Meggett 3rd and 31 conversion. Now Paul thinks it's the 600th best play. But one thing I didn't mention about that game, and John, I don't know if you've gone back and looked at the videos of the plays, but it was in a driving snowstorm in Denver.
I have not looked at it. Is that true?
Yeah. So that in and of itself just makes plays more iconic, sort of like the Bradshaw run in the snow, right? It just strikes something in the viewer's mind.
Oh, absolutely.
And the one thing I'll say about that mega play, I mean, the points were going to be very difficult to come by that day. So 2 things. The Sims pass was high and behind David. Now, this was a screen, so this goes to show you how difficult the passing conditions were. High and behind. He knocked the ball up in the air and then recouped and got a hold of the ball. So the difficulty of the catch. And then he's running, and while some of the Bronco players are having difficulty with their footing, Meggett was in perfect balance, cuts back, breaks a tackle attempt from one of the best tacklers in NFL history, Steve Atwater.
Steve Atwater, yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then two linemen, Bart Oates and William Roberts, were up front and just doing an excellent job of blocking. So he broke a few tackles, did a cutback, made a great catch. So it had like all the elements of and by the way, it may be the last well-executed screen pass that I've seen from the Giants.
You know what? Funny, Hugo, I just searched it. I'm looking at the play right now, and you're right. It was a hell of a catch because it is snowing. You can barely see the yard markers. The numbers on the field, you got no shot. And Meggett does make one really nice cutback, and then he does avoid that water tackle. Yeah, that is a hell of a job on a 3rd and 31 screen.
Absolutely. So, when Paul said, "Oh no, it's not," I said maybe my memories are off. So I went back and looked at it, and I was like, "No, this is like an iconic play." And by the way, they needed to win that game. Like I said, they need to sweep the last 3 games to win the NFC East. Anyhow.
By the way, I'll just point out, it was really good for the Giants to wear their color rush jerseys in that game, just for the record.
Well, that was the standard on the.
Yeah, I'm aware. I'm making a joke. Yes.
Okay, I got you. So look, I've been really engaged with this franchise since 1978. I was in probably my early teens, so really got into football back then, and there's a lot of good, and this team's given us a lot of joy over the years. But there's also, with the good comes the bad. And I wanted to give you my top 5 heartbreak plays since I've been a deeply engaged fan. So if you would indulge me for a moment.
Okay.
My number 1 is the 2002 playoff game against the 49ers.
The field goal.
Giants blew a lead. Yep.
All right.
The 2010 Deshaun Jackson walk-off punt return.
Yep, that'll do it.
The 1997 playoff game versus the Vikings, where everything that could go wrong did go wrong down the stretch, and the Giants lost the game. The 1989 Flipper Anderson walk-off.
Yeah.
We talked about that the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 1988 season finale, Al Toon catching the ball over a backup safety, as I remember, Tom Flynn, and knocked the Giants out of the playoffs. And honorable mention, there was a 1988 game at home versus the Niners, where in the winding minutes, Joe Montana hits Jerry Rice down the right sideline. Now, all those games had playoff implications.
Nothing from Super Bowl 35, Hugo. I'm surprised by that. I thought you might have one from the loss of the Ravens.
No, not really, because that game sort of got out of hand. And I'm really talking about, gut punches, right? It was obviously very disappointing to lose that game. But these were like, just weird things. Weird things happening in big moments.
No, I got you.
Sort of the way I defined it. And then, notably, I kept the 1978 iconic fumble play out of it. And the reason I did is because the Giants were a very bad team in 1978. So even though it was a weird play...
it was a bad play. It was an embarrassing play, but it didn't ruin what could have been a good season, right?
Exactly.
Right, I got you.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Okay. So coming back to the present age... Well, I guess one thing I'm looking for from the Giants is sort of I think something that's very challenging, which is what I'd like to see is really an open competition for the offensive line spots outside of left tackle and center. But at the same time, I think I want them to make the determination of who the best 5 are and then allow enough time to create, a lot of chemistry between those starting 5. And I think that's just a very tough balancing act. I must say that, Coach Dable's been very true to his word when he says, it doesn't matter how you got here, your draft status, how much money you make. If you're the best player, you're going to play.
Yeah.
So I'm not discounting necessarily guys like Izudu and McKeithen in the process. sometimes when your house is on fire or near a fire hazard, you have to pay up a lot for insurance. And in some ways, maybe that's what they did this offseason. But I'm in the camp of let the best man win the jobs and then go from there.
Yeah, and Hugo, and Hugo, by the way, what I think they'll do, and again, I can't tell you how they were lined up the last 2 days of practice because they don't want us reporting who's in exactly what position. But to me, if you go based on how much you're paying guys and where you drafted them, right, that's how you find the guys that are most talented, right? So you want to, if you believe those are the most talented guys, those are the 5 you're going to start with. To me, Matt, and please disagree with me if you think I'm off here, the guys that I think have either the most talent or the most proven experience being a successful starter on the offensive line is Andrew Thomas, John Runyon, Jermaine Illuminor, John Michael Schmitz, and then Evan Neal, right? It's some combination of either past success or high draft capital, which means high talent level. So my guess, Hugo, to your point, and Matt, you have those 5 guys start off in some type of alignment. I think Runyon has said he's more comfortable at right guard, and then that would mean Illuminor would be at left guard, Neal at right tackle, Thomas at left tackle, John Michael Schmitz at center. Let's start with those guys in those spots, and then if somebody else shows that they're better, they can slide up. But based on, again, salary, where they've been drafted, talent level, to me, those are the 5 guys you're going to start with and then try to figure it out from there.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, of those 5, obviously, Andrew Thomas is the franchise left tackle. He's proven, when healthy, to be perhaps the best, if not one of the best left tackles in the NFL. John Michael Schmitz is going to be the starting center. Just used a second-round pick on him last year. Between the 2 guard spots, I don't know where necessarily Runyon will go and Illuminor will go.
Runyon's going to start.
Yes.
At guard.
Yes.
Period. Stop.
100
Yes.
for sure. As long as he's healthy,
we'll see.
As long as he's healthy, he will be a starter at one of the guard positions. I just don't know which one yet.
Yeah, same here.
I'd say the biggest question mark, I think it's fair to say, would be Evan Neal at right tackle, just based on how the last 2 seasons have gone. Now, I don't think if Evan Neal, struggles as much as he did last year to start the season, I don't know if he will be afforded, as I would say, I guess, as long of a leash as the starting right tackle. Just what my assumption would be.
Well, and I think even regardless of what you think of him, I just think the fact that you have somebody in the building with a track record of success at right tackle makes it easier to make that decision quicker. When last year, if you're pulling him out of that tackle spot, I don't think you have near as much confidence in anyone last year that you have in Jermaine Illuminor to step into that spot this season.
Oh, yeah, for sure. 100%. I mean, Illuminor was signed to most likely to start on the offensive line, but also as insurance for Evan Neal, just in case he continues to struggle. I do think that there is optimism that Evan Neal will bounce back, at least to some degree, this year. I think, and we've talked about this throughout the offseason, the biggest person that was brought in this offseason, in my opinion, the most important, was Carmen Bricillo. He was brought in hopes of, obviously, improving a position group that has been, a weakness.
A source of consternation.
Yes, it was an Achilles heel this past season. Obviously, the Giants gave up 20 more sacks than any other team in the NFL.
This past season, this past decade, that's all relative.
Yeah, so Bricillo was brought in, and he has a great track record of helping guys develop and grow. And it's guys, as we've seen in Las Vegas the last 2 seasons, that don't have the same, draft pedigree or free agent contract pedigree as the current group that the Giants now have that will be competing for those 5 starting spots. So I have confidence that Carmen Bricillo will help bring out the best of Evan Neal. I think Evan Neal will, I think also hopefully will be coming into the season healthy, fully healthy, ready to go. I mean, it seems like ancient history at this point, but people seem to forget that Andrew Thomas, his first 2 seasons while playing through injuries, he struggled. People were ready to write him off and, get him out of the starting left tackle spot, and it was year 3.
And Neal's had, by the way, just as many injury issues as Thomas had his first 2 years, too.
Yeah, and it was year 3 that Andrew Thomas took that huge leap and all of a sudden became an all-pro. And a guy that is undoubtedly the best offensive lineman on the team.
We saw more flashes from Thomas at the end of his second year than we've seen from Neal, but then again, we didn't see Neal the final, 8 games of last year for him.
He missed the second half of the season.
So he never had the opportunity to make that jump in the second part of his second year because he wasn't on the field.
Exactly. So I do think Bricillo was brought in, obviously to help the entire offense line, but in part to help get Evan Neal's career on track. And if Evan Neal can take a step in his development and provide even just like solid play at right tackle, I think you will see a humongous jump from the entire offensive line.
Absolutely.
That is the key position, I think. If he can lock that position down, then this unit is going to improve tremendously.
And then I'm curious to see where they think Kazudu fits. Do they think he's a tackle like they used him last year? Or is he a guard? He was a 3rd-round pick. Obviously, they like his talent. Where does he fit in? And then I think I like Aaron Stinney just being here as a backup guard, a guy that has a lot of starting experience in the league. Now, is he a Pro Bowler? No, but at least he's a guy. To me, he's like this year's version of Ben Bredesen, right? Where you feel like you need to put him in there and play, you can put him in there and play, and you're going to get serviceable play from him for the most part. So that's how I look at Hugo. I'm not sure how you would do it yourself, but that's kind of how I look at it.
No, I think we're aligned, but it is a balancing act and not an easy one, and I think all eyes will be on the offensive line throughout training camp and the preseason games. Now, one thing I must say about Andrew Thomas, he's sort of the prototype for overcoming adversity. You mentioned the injuries. He probably had the very worst offensive line coaching situation in his rookie year. His offensive line coach got changed in the middle of the year. There was an interim offensive line coach. And let's be honest, the offensive system they were running at the time wasn't the very best offensive system either. So when I look at Andrew Thomas, I see a guy who just, can overcome a lot of adversity, and I really admire that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think his level of play has anything to do with the offensive system. I mean, I don't think that really impacts the left tackle much in terms of how you're playing as an individual, to be totally honest with you. That offensive system developed Tyron Smith into Tyron Smith. So, literally same offense. So, I don't think that's necessarily the adversity, and Hugo, appreciate the call. But
yeah, thank you.
Look, overcoming the injury and being mentally tough to survive the bad play, absolutely. I think Andrew Thomas, and we talked to Jermaine Illuminor when he got here too. That's what he's been so big on. And I think both, and Andrew's been here already, but Jermaine Illuminor made the point to me, and guys, go back if you want to go find it. My interview with Jermaine Illuminor when he first got here, it's a great interview on the John Settle podcast. Please go find it. He talked about how he really thinks just from a mental perspective he can help Evan, bounce back from bad plays, stay very steady, things like that can really help Evan along as a young player.
Yeah, and just a quick note on Andrew Thomas. I've been wanting to kind of touch on this. I feel like he is going to, I don't want to say take a big step this year because he already was an All-Pro not too long ago, 2022. But I think perhaps more importantly, I just have a feeling he's going to step up and just become perhaps like the leader on the team, if not one of the big team leaders. Obviously, 2 of the team leaders from the last couple of years left this offseason between Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney. And I feel like there's just, I don't want to say a leadership void, but there's a spot there for someone to really step up and become one of like the big voices in the locker room. And I know to start his career, that kind of wasn't Andrew Thomas's personality per se, but I have a feeling he's just going to step up and really help keep the offensive line and the whole locker room, keep them together and help, they're going to face adversity throughout the season. It happens every year. I mean, unless you're the 2007 Patriots, you're not going to have a perfect regular season. And I just think Andrew Thomas is going to really step up in that capacity and really help keep the locker room together whenever they do face the inevitable adversity.
He's just such a solid, steady guy. He's a lead by an example type of guy. He's not a rah-rah guy, but I agree. He's someone that I think the rest of the line can learn from and follow his example, and he can kind of be a real face of that group.
Yeah.
As they try to improve and get better. Guys, don't forget, Giants TV is the Giants' digital streaming video app. It brings original video content and game highlights on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV is free on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and the Giants mobile app. It's the Giants' official connected TV streaming app. Giants season tickets, folks. The schedule is out. Take your fans to the next level with a season ticket membership. Stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game days. Memberships are now available for 2024. To learn more about all the exclusive member benefits, visit Giants.com/tickets. Limited inventory is available. Big Blue Kickoff Live is presented by Cadillac. Let's go to one more caller, Cliff in New York. Cliff, what's going on, pal?
Hey, guys. Thanks for the show. Great stuff. You changed what I wanted to talk about. I would just quickly say I would point out the notebook posted on the website about the changes made by the competition committee. I found it extremely helpful, especially about the kickoff, and put everything in context for me. And I would just summarize about that whole thing, since I've had very strong reservations about it. It just adds a lot to the cerebral part of the game for the players. And they already, they'll have to be up to it, and so will the officials. And I think also the announcers are going to have to really help out a lot too, to be totally up on it. But I really would rather talk about what you guys were talking about earlier in the show.
Yeah, that's fine.
The schedule. When we finished with 6 wins, I said, oh, boy, I hope it's not like a few years ago when we finished 6-10 and we got a really tough schedule the following season. Well, it did happen again, and it has nothing to do with anything except how the rotation goes with which divisions you get, and you get a year when the divisions you got are very strong. So all we got this year is probably the best team in the league so far, and some runners-up in one of the divisions. But I'm thinking, in light of that, I think we actually have the horses to compete with anybody this year. Actually, I'm so impressed with the changes in free agency and then the draft. And I think to take it from Coach Marvin yesterday, on paper, on paper, it's I think we're pretty damn good. And so how do you get to performance? Well, how are the coaches? Well, if they are as unified as they were in 22, and I think that Dable's big changes were to reestablish that, from what I could see, that they're all on the same page, working together again, then that's how you get the performance, right? I think we have the horses to compete in this schedule.
Yeah, well, just about your first point about the Giants' schedule, the opponents, the divisions they're facing. Obviously, the Giants play the AFC North this year, which could end up, in my opinion, being the best division in the entire NFL.
If I had to guess right now, I think it is the best division.
Yeah,
in the NFL. I'm with you on that.
All 4 of those teams, barring some big injuries, I think are going to at least push to make the playoffs, and I wouldn't be surprised if 3 of the 4 end up making it.
If all 4 of those teams win
4.
9 games or more, it would not shock me.
Yeah. So while that part of the schedule certainly is, just unfortunate luck that the Giants are facing that division this year, I would say on the opposite end of the spectrum, the Giants also get to play the NFC South this year,
which is probably the weakest division in the NFC.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, the Falcons, a lot of people think could take a big step with Kirk Cousins, but he's coming off a big injury, so he's got to prove that he's healthy first before, you start putting them out as saying how far they're going to go this year.
Like, would it shock you if that division winner won 9 games?
No. If the Falcons won at 9 and 8,
yeah,
it would not shock me.
I agree
at all.
100%. I'm with you.
Because the other 3 teams in that division, the Panthers were the worst team in the NFL this past season.
Who knows what they're going to be with the whole new coaching staff? We just don't know.
They're going to be better than they were last year.
Can't be worse.
Exactly. And then with the Saints and Buccaneers, could both of those teams end up being good? Yeah. If you told me that they could each, or one of the 2 could go, 9-8, 10-7, I wouldn't be shocked. But at the same time, if you told me each team went 6-11, I wouldn't be shocked either.
Yeah, last year the Bucs and the Saints tied for first place in the division at 9-8.
Yeah, so just a little balance of the schedule. While the AFC division opponent is the toughest it can be, the NFC division opponent is, at least on paper, the easiest that it could be.
Yeah, and then you get the Colts, the Seahawks, and the Vikings. Those teams are solid, but they aren't upper echelon teams because the Giants finish in 3rd place in the NFC East. So you do get a little bit of a break with those as well. Cliff, anything else?
Yeah, I like the balance, but in the first 8 games, it seems like it's a little worse in terms of who we have to get first.
Oh, no, you're right. Cliff, that's why you got to win the first 2. You got to win the first 2 games of the schedule. So even if you go 2 and 4 in weeks 3 through 8, when you play in every team finished minimum 500 last year or better, and made some of them, most of which made the playoffs, that's why you got to start 2-0, so you can survive that next 6-game stretch, which is very, very difficult.
Yeah, that was actually one of the notes I wrote down about the schedule that I did not bring up before. Obviously, the first 2 weeks, the Giants could end up facing 2 rookie quarterbacks in J.J. McCarthy with Minnesota and Jaden Daniels with Washington. Obviously, you would hope that they could jump out to a 2-0 start, but it's the opponents that you just mentioned, weeks 3 through 8, that are all good teams, either playoff teams last year or close to playoff teams. If the Giants can get through the first 8 weeks of the season and emerge heading into week 9, that week 9 game against Washington at 4-4,
that's all you need to be.
Then I would think they have a very good chance at making a legitimate postseason run.
And you know what? Even if you're 3-5,
even 3-5,
you're not done.
Yeah,
you're not done. You're fine. I prefer to be 4-4. I'd feel great about 4-4, but 3-5, you're okay.
Yeah, even if you start 3-5, you then Washington, the Carolina game in Germany, you have your bye, a little bit of a reset, and then Tampa Bay, the Cowboys game, Thanksgiving, tough, but then Saints.
So how about let's talk about it this way, all right? Once they play Dallas, and Cliff, thanks for the call, I appreciate it. You get 6 games left once you get to Dallas on Thanksgiving, okay? So that would put you at 11 games played on the schedule. I would like the Giants to be 6-5 heading into that Dallas game. That would be a good scenario for me. Then if you could figure out a way to go, you got 6 games left, figure out a way to go 3-3 the rest of the way and finish 9-8, I'm okay with that. And you have a chance. You get the Saints at home, the Colts at home, then you figure out a way to beat either Atlanta, Dallas, Baltimore, or Philadelphia. Then you're looking at 9-8. I'd sign up for a 9-8 season right now.
Yeah, I don't know many Giants fans that wouldn't sign up for that.
So if it's like you said, Matt, if you take that first 8 games and you go 4-4, if you can go then 2-1 in the next group, right, and you're 6-5, and then you try to go 3-3 in the final 6, it's not bad.
No, and look, I know last season did not go how any of us would have hoped, and I know that might have some lingering negative feelings or pessimistic feelings about this season, but in response to that, I just want to make sure everyone remembers the 2022 season, where the season before was bad. Obviously, there was a bit of a change because there was a regime change, a new head coach, new general manager, new coaching staff, but the expectations were very low for the Giants from the outside world, the media, heading into that 2022 season. And they won 9 games, made the playoffs, and won a postseason game. So while there are some opponents, even the Ravens, who we said probably the toughest game on the schedule this season, 2022, the Giants played the Ravens at home, and they upset them, and they won. It was one of the biggest wins of the entire season. That game, I think I forgot who it was, stripped Lamar Jackson at the Kayvon stripped Lamar Jackson in the last play of the game. Solidified the win. So
the Julian Love interception late in that game, which was huge.
You never know. We're only in May right now, so
right. Julian Love had the pick right in that game. Was it Love or was it somebody else? It was Love, right? Yeah, it was Love, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So Dom
was giving me an empty stare. He had me second guessing myself, but it was just his normal empty stare. It wasn't like you're wrong empty stare.
So yeah, even when we talk about some of these tough matchups, you never know what's going to happen. That's why they actually play the games. Records aren't determined before the season starts by looking at the schedule.
That's a win. That's a loss.
I know everyone does it.
That's a win.
Everyone does it every single year. Never going to change, but that's why they actually play the games. So until they actually play the games, I'm not marking any of these games down.
Remember last year we all thought the Jets game would be super difficult because Aaron Rodgers was there, and Aaron Rodgers gets hurt. It happens, right? I mean, nobody thought the Patriots were going to be as bad as they were last year. It happens. Don't know what these teams are going to be. So you go there and you figure out a way to get to 9 or 10 wins, and then you're feeling really good about yourself with a chance to get into the postseason.
Exactly.
Citak, good to be back, bud.
Good to be back. Looking forward to talking to you again tomorrow.
And we're going to run this back tomorrow. In fact, Dom, what do you know what the media schedule is tomorrow? Do you have that handy, what time media is and stuff like that? Do you know offhand?
No, I don't.
You don't? Yeah, I can check that here too, because we might have to push the show back to like 2 o'clock, depending on when media availability is.
9:45, 10, and 10:15.
Okay, can you go on mic so that people can actually hear you when you're telling me what the media schedule is? Thank you, Dom. I appreciate that. That's how microphones work. They generally have to be in front of your mouth and turned on for people to hear what you're telling me.
So 9:45 we'll have defensive assistants. 10 a.m. will be Dable. Practice at 10:15, and the players will be available at 12:30.
Okay, so maybe we'll push the show back to 1 tomorrow then. So we'll do the players from 12:30 to 1, and then we'll do the show at 1 o'clock. So if you want to tune in tomorrow, folks, Citak and I'll be live at 1 o'clock. That way we can do the OTAs, listen to the players, and we talk about what they say on the show. There's no point of us, doing it while it's going on. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So tomorrow, 1 o'clock, put it down. Big Blue Kickoff live on this Thursday. It's all brought to you by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. For Dom, for Citak, I'm Schmeelk. We'll see you then.